Hello, it's Dr. Rowe here. I'm recording this message whilst actually in Adelaide in Australia, and the reason I thought I'd do it is because I've got a little bit of a few minutes here, and one of the questions that's been coming up, I know, is buy-to-let properties for first-time buyers. I'm a first-time buyer, I want to get on the property ladder, but at the same time I'm also wanting to get my first buy-to-let property. How does it work? Should I do that? Should I just go get my own home first? That's a cracking question. I guess the way to tackle that question is for me to reflect a question back on you, and that is the following. Are you sitting there currently in a job, and are you expecting to stay in that job for the rest of your life? Do you love that job enough to want to stay there for the rest of your life, or to climb the corporate ladder? And are you not so worried right now about having any additional income? You're happy to just rely on that corporate salary. You trust that it's going to give you the income that you want for life. You're not worried about more time freedom. You're not worried about enjoying life a bit more and having more choices. You really are focused on getting that career right. And if that's the case, then it might not be that this is the right time for you to be buying your first investment property, and it might be better actually that you put your money into buying your first home, because ultimately that home is where you're going to be living whilst you're building that career. If on the other hand you said to me, actually Dr. Rowe, I kind of like my job and I could see myself staying here for a few years, but I'd love to be able to be in a position in 2-3 years time or more where I have choices. Maybe I'm making £1,000, £2,000, £3,000, £4,000 a month passively from a portfolio that I've built, and I really want to be able to have choices, because it might be that I don't decide to stay in that career. It might be that I realise there's a recession ahead, and it might be that the company's going to downsize, or there's a potential risk for me to lose my job. So I want more security. In which case, it might actually be worth, and again, you have to seek professional advice, but it might be worth you considering, what if I was to delay putting my money down on my first home? What if I was to go out and find myself a relatively low value buy-to-let property? And I can give you an idea here. You're looking at somewhere in the region of about 50, 60,000 at the low end, up to about 80 to 90,000 pounds, that kind of sweet spot range. And you got yourself on the first time buyer's ladder as a property investor. And if you do that, that will probably produce for you somewhere in the region of, depending on the type of property you do, whether you do a standard buy-to-let or maybe you do a small, what we call a room-let type strategy where you have a few tenants in there. But let's stay with a simple buy-to-let model. You'd probably produce somewhere between 200 to 350, maybe even £400 a month cash flow, depending on the yield of that area. Now, if you're sat in your job and you've got £300 a month coming in passively every single month, that's about £3,500 to £4,000 a year. The benefits to you are, as a first-time landlord, once you've gone past the first 6 months of being a landlord, and again, you will need to seek advice on this, so you'll need to go and speak to an independent broker on this, but typically after 6 months of owning your first buy-to-let property, you're classified as a professional landlord, which opens up the market to you for additional types of mortgage. So it might be now that you've had your first 6 months. If you've done this correctly, and I'll tackle this in another video, you can buy a property at a discount. You can add value to that property. After 6 months, 6.5, 7 months time down the road, you go back, you have it revalued, reappraised. The value is now higher, and you have the potential to refinance that property. You may even get a better interest rate. You would pull some of your equity out. You take that equity and then you go buy your home that you're talking about. Or you might say, well, actually, you know what, this is only 6 months down the line. I'm happy to stay renting at the moment. Why don't I go do the same thing again? I've saved up a little bit more money. Let me go buy a second property. And it might be that in 12 months' time, you're sat on 2 of these, making you a total of £600 or £700 a month or more. That's a life-changing situation now, because you've now got £7,000 a month, a year coming in. And here you are in a career which you enjoy doing, and you're happy because your career's climbing up, but you're building a history as a landlord. And then you might decide each year you want to add 1 or 2 more properties to that portfolio, and before you know it, 4 or 5 years down the line, you might have 7 or 8 properties. They're all cash flowing, and that's where you have a choice, because you were in the career because you like the career, but at the same time you're also open to the fact that you might want to change career, or possibly have some freedom back to yourself as well. And actually, once you've bought your first few buy-to-let properties, you might be able to expand. You might decide to get more knowledge on this, get some mentoring or whatever it is, up your skill level, and start looking at some of the more sophisticated strategies like houses of multiple occupation, small room-let properties up to say 4 rooms, or going up and look at 7, 8, 9, 10 bedroom properties where you could be looking at incomes per unit, per property, of £700, £1,000, £1,500 or more per month. which in some cases 2 of those could replace completely your salary. So going back to the start of the question, should I go and get a buy-to-let property first, or should I go and buy my home first? It comes down to your personal circumstances. If you could delay for a year, year and a half buying your own home, that might potentially put you in a position where you get a couple of buy-to-lets under your belt. Gives you some choices, you then go and buy your own home, and on top of that you can add to your portfolio as well. Now if you're going in to buy your own buy-to-let property first before you buy your own home, be aware that the mortgage requirements will be more stringent as a rule, but again, seek professional advice on this. Go to an independent financial advisor and they will give you advice on what the appropriate mortgage is for you. And once you've got that property under your belt, you'll generally find it will start to get a little bit easier. Again, as I'm filming this right now, that may change in the future, but that's down to just having the right people on your power team. Now, power teams is a whole different discussion for a completely different video. For now, hold on to this thought. And if you said to me, well, what should I go away and do right now, Dr. Rowe? I would say sit down with a piece of paper and answer the following questions. Question number 1, do you love your career? And could you see yourself staying in that location, in that career for the next, say, 5 years and growing that career? And if that's the case, then that will probably steer you towards potentially buying your own home. Second question, if you're staying in that career for, say, 5 years, is it important to you that you own a house, or is it important to you that you own an income passively? And the two are different. If you own a house, you won't have an income coming in passively. If you own an investment, in other words, you own an income, you get a passive income. That's the second question. And the third question is this: would you like to have a passive income? Would you like to have a small portfolio of 2 or 3 properties or more over the next 5 years, or more properties if you want, where in 5 years' time, or 3 years' time, or 2 years' time, you have the choice to step away from that career or go part-time? And I think those 3 questions will pretty much steer you in one direction or the other. Now, of course, if you look out for the other videos that I do, that'll start to give you some tools to bolt in place to help with, if, for example, you're going to build a portfolio, what are some of the steps you need to do next?